knowledge on Grambo grows.
You know, you don't have to get a canister of CO2. It's just in the air. We breathe out CO2. It's just like when you're doing air exchange in your tent, you know, you've got 600 to 800 parts per million just raw CO2 in there. And that's so fascinating. So you're hearing my whole life of thought like, man, I'm feeding my plants plant food. No, that ain't what the plant's made of. It's made of the air. And this is what the Richard Feynman video was about. He said the trees are made from air. You think that the tree comes from the ground. You think the cannabis plant comes from the ground, but it's kind of just a medium, right? So then you got followed up there after you got 45% carbon, 45% oxygen, rounds it out with about 6% of hydrogen. Now, where does that hydrogen come from? H2O. So now we've got the two O's in the H2O. We got the two O's in the CO2. You understand why all of a sudden it's like, oh, plants are giving off oxygen because they're ripping off H2O and or H2, the two hydrogens and the oxygen, and they're knocking off that one oxygen off the H2O. They're knocking off those two oxygens there, and they're not necessarily producing oxygen. It's more a byproduct of them splitting these molecules apart. Back to carbon, back to oxygen, back to hydrogen. With those three things, we're at 96% of the plant. That's freaking messed up. So then finally we get to something that we would think of as kind of like the things we give it. Rounding up at the bottom, 1.5 to 4% is nitrogen. In a healthy vegetative cannabis plant, I'd say it's probably 3 to 4% of the plant is nitrogen. Well, that's crazy. So by the time you get to the first macro element, you're down over 96% of the plant is already taken up. Carbon, oxygen, hydrogen. Rounding up in, what is that, fourth place with 2 to 3% is nitrogen. Then you get your phosphorus, which is 0.05% of the plant. Then you get down to potassium, which is like about 1 to 3%, calcium, 0.5%, magnesium, 0.1%. You get down to micronutrients, all the micros. I always concern myself with all the micros and everything. And it's literally 1/1000th of the plant is the micronutrients. Now, does that mean that micronutrients aren't important? They are very, very important. Enzymatic situations, they lower the activation energy. And this is where the Jug Dealers guys come in. Jaron would say things like, well, plant food isn't food. Think of it more like vitamins. And well, goddamn, we're spending a lot of money on vitamins. That's because that's how you remain healthy. If we don't have vitamin C in our body, we get scurvy. We get all like pirate and we get you get an eye patch and a bird, and you're like, I wish I had an orange. Get rid of this goddamn bird. Good pirate material. So yeah, it's just like how we'll get scurvy without vitamin C. The plants need these enzymes and these micronutrients at these very specific ratios to make the other compounds work. It's very, very crazy to me. And nitrogen comes from the Haber-Bosch method. If you guys know about the Haber-Bosch method, the guy was both a war criminal and won the Nobel Prize, fairly simultaneous, for Zyklon B and also the Zyklon A and B, and then also for this nitrogen fixation, the Haber-Bosch method. And we get all of our nitrogen from this method. You know where it comes from out in the air is lightning strikes, ripping apart constituent molecules in the air. And so it just kind of blew my mind as he's talking about like trees come from the air, and even the water that they're drinking, the H2O that they're absorbing up through the roots, that, most likely fell from the sky at some point. And you could argue that 90+% of the plant is from the sky. It's actually the soil is just a medium for it to like root itself into the ground and have a little territory it calls home, and also to suck up some of that nutrition in the form of vitamins and minerals and stuff. That blows my goddamn mind. So shout out to you, Richard Feynman, really making me understand our plant food is not plant food. And that's really what terpene and cannabinoid production comes down to is you want some sucrose. I was watching a great interview that James Loud had done this weekend with this awesome scientist. I failed to get her name, but but she's out there, tatted up, smart chick over on the James Loud show. You'll see that. And she just talked about how sucrose, how important it is to get these sugars late in the flowering stage. And that's really where your terpenes and everything is. You know, you want your plant to start fading out, but you want them to go. Who said that? Who we got? We got Jeff. How does one become a philosopher? You get really smart and then like talk calmly. That seems to be the way that it goes. But the man, Richard Feynman, check him out. If you're into quantum mechanics, if you're into physics, if you're into deep space, you're going to see all sorts of things that Richard Feynman talked about on this little couch is going to get your interest. Where do trees come from? Where does cannabis come from? It comes from the air, ladies and gentlemen. It does not grow from the earth. It grows from the air. Holy crap. Blows my mind.
We're dropping knowledge on Grambo.